What's up? I'm Destiny. This is Monday Mail number 32. How you guys doing today? I'm going to be answering the Monday Mail questions because I do this every single week without fail. So we're going to jump right into them. The first question comes from Doki3, and his question is, what books are you excited to read with Nathan? I haven't really thought about this too much since he's still borderline fucking retarded. Not retarded, but he's really young, so he can't really read anything. So one of the books we're reading right now is like the Mouse in the House, I think. Does anybody know this book? It's a mouse, and if you give a mouse an ice cream, he wants a cookie. If you give him a cookie, he wants to fucking drum and start a band or some shit. I don't know. It's horrible. It's very boring. The character development is dry as fuck. I feel like I'm reading a description of the people in Final Fantasy 15. The story is very linear, which I consider positive. But yeah, no, I don't know. In terms of looking forward to reading, well, I guess like when I grew up, I didn't read, dude. I hated reading. I played RPGs, man. I guess Harry Potter. I don't know. Harry Potter is a good meme, probably. I read that. I like that. I read all of that, and I liked all of that. I read the Artemis Fowl books, but I feel like that probably gave me a pretty big ego. I'm not sure but that's probably not a big deal, right? I don't know. Whatever the popular fiction books are that the kids read these days, I'll try to pick out, something like that. I'm not like looking forward to it. There's not like oh my god, when I grew up, I loved reading Sherlock Holmes or whatever. I can't wait for my kid to get in. Like, I don't have any books like that growing up or anything like that. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not like looking forward in particular to any particular book. The second question comes from DJ What. If you lost your Twitch stream, would you try to survive on YouTube/Hitbox, or would you transition into another career like the computer building stuff? I mean, considering streaming is what I do mostly and what I excel at, I would probably move to another platform. It would probably be YouTube, maybe Hitbox, but probably YouTube, especially with Ice, my boy Ice on it now. YouTube, just because you can transition into archiving videos so easily on YouTube, and then you've got the whole YouTube fan base and the YouTube fan base and the discovery and everything in there that you can tap into is going to be way better than like Hitbox. So, yeah, it would definitely be moving over to YouTube. I don't anticipate being banned anytime soon. I think I've got like some friends at Twitch now, and I think I'm on good terms with them. I talk to them somewhat regularly, and we all seem to be kind of chill. But I don't know, dude. Every day is a one day closer to death. Hopefully not. I think we're okay. I should be okay. Hopefully I don't get banned anytime soon. The third and final question, after I skip a couple shitty ones, is looking back on the political memes, to this point as a whole, what would you say is the best thing that you've taken away from the process of discussing politics online, and the worst thing? So I think being able to form your thoughts into coherent, logical structures where you can go from A to B to C to D, and to kind of follow that, I've improved significantly at that over the past 3 or 4 months. Ever since my JonTron debate, I've taken a really big look at how I approach conversations online, and yeah, I think I've improved significantly at that. I haven't had any like large people to talk to since then, but kind of the smaller conversations and the people that kind of pop up on my Twitter that come on to chat, I feel like I'm communicating my ideas very clearly now. There's still some room for improvement, but I mean, I'm conscious of it all and I'm working on it, and the more conversations I have, the better off we'll end up being. So that's probably the best thing, is kind of the self-improvement and the ability to communicate ideas. The worst thing for me, and I think this is probably a journey that everybody makes since they leave high school. When you leave high school, every person is a beautiful human being. Adults aren't perfect, but man, they try their best, and the world is ahead of you, and the sunlight is on your shoulders, and the wind at your back, and just everything is fine. And then after, this is my journey at least, after you get your first real job, and then you have to deal with real adults in the real world outside of a classroom setting, your faith in humanity just slowly begins to disintegrate. And it seems like every interaction I have with the real world just further contributes to that disintegration of any of my respect for humanity. So the worst thing that I've gotten out of all these political conversations, the absolute worst thing, the thing that bothers me the most, is probably the lack of understanding of really, really basic concepts. So I feel like, in going through all of this, I feel like a basic psych or sociology or maybe a stats class or something would be like, or econ. I don't know, any of these classes that I thought everybody takes at schools, or that takes at school or took in school. Just these really basic ways of interpreting information. Like, I got into an argument. I don't know if this was posted on my channel. Oh, fuck, I should know this. But I mean, did you see the argument I got into with that guy who had the graph of like black people married make this much, you know, or people married make this much, people married or not married, you know, make even less. Fuck, I fucked that up. It was like people married make this much, okay? Black people married make this much. You know, white people non-married make this much. Black people non-married make this much, right? Like this guy is looking at this graph, right? What does this graph tell us? It tells you one thing. It tells you how much money people make when they're married and how much money people who are how much money people make who are unmarried, right? It doesn't tell you anything more than that. It doesn't tell you that getting married will move you into another bracket. You can't infer that from this data at all. It doesn't support that conclusion at all. It's a hypothesis. You can test with further data exploration or testing, but right? Like these are like really, really, really basic things that I would expect, you know, like a year 10, year 11 high school or whoever's been through a basic econ or psych class to understand. A very basic concept. But people just don't understand this stuff. And that's very worrying because when you're, I guess, this is like a whole other concept that I should have thought of. This idea where where people kind of create these fake worlds for themselves to live in, and I used to think that people experienced like a lot of cognitive dissonance when they create these kind of false realities where you know, like, I don't care about that, I'm ignoring that, I don't care about that, I'm ignoring that, I don't care, right? And that's kind of like how you put the blinders on and you charge forward, right? And I figured that like this is how people construct these false realities, the Rush Limbaughs, the Glenn Becks, the Sean Hannitys, right? By trying to ignore all this information, right? But what actually seems to be happening is people just interpret information very poorly. People read like a stat like 72% of Muslims, you know, are in favor of Sharia law, and all of a sudden that means 72% of Muslims are radical. Like, whoa, slow your roll, dude. Like, what does Sharia law mean? Okay, do you think Sharia law in Indonesia means the same thing as Sharia law in Saudi Arabia? Right? Like biblical law in the United States or holy people in the United States probably believe very different things than biblical people in Sudan. So like, and Ben Shapiro is really good at this, at disingenuously presenting information. But it's really sad that people lack these basic data processing skills because, I don't know, I feel like whenever I would fight with my mom about religion, you'd always try to like, you hone in on the cognitive dissonance. This is like an asshole argument, right? But you hone in on the cognitive dissonance and just beat on it until the person has to give. Something has to break, right? How can you believe this thing when this thing? How can you believe this when this? Right? So one of two things happens. Either they break and they, you know, okay, fuck, you're right. This is fucked, right? Which never happens realistically, right? Or two, you know, like, I don't care about any of this, fuck you, blah, 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 right? And then it's like, okay, so at least like whatever, we both know you're being an irrational piece of shit, right? And then they go back and they keep believing, right? But now it's like, hey, how do you actually think that like, and like you people make these absurd statements, like you make these absurd statements that are like so uncontroversial, and then you find yourselves having to defend it against this deluge of horrible data. Like globalism is an amazing thing that has benefited all of humanity. Probably more so than like any other kind of, well, I don't know, but it's been an enormous benefit. I don't, more than any other economic concept. I don't know if you could say that, right? But it's a massive, massive benefit to the entire world. This is not a contested idea. Okay, there are not economists saying that like, oh no, we need massive protectionism all over the world. Like nobody says this. But Destiny, what about this one time Jordan Peterson? I don't know, but maybe one guy says it, right? But for the most part, these aren't like ideas that economists debate. Now, we can have legitimate arguments over how much free trade is okay, you know, and there are problems with free trade. You know, like, is it really free trade if your local companies have to compete against another country's companies that's being subsidized by that government? That's not really free trade, right? That's kind of Trump accused Canada of doing that, although I think that the World Trade, the WTO, I think cleared them of that in like 2007, but whatever, right? But there are legitimate criticisms. But like this, when people are literally coming out and being like, globalism is bad, like the fuck are you talking about, dude? What do you even mean when you say it? Do you understand what you mean when you say that? Do you want to pay like 7 times as much for a car or 20 times as much for a computer? Like, what do you mean when you say globalism is bad? Like, like that, these are just like bizarro statements that have no foundation in reality. And normally, I don't know, like I would expect like people that say these kinds of things, you know, to just like, okay, well, what about this and this and this? And they're like, no, but that's not it. But they're like, well, look, I have this chart here that proves that this and this and this and this proves this and this and that, and they have like all this data. So not only are they're like, it's hard to even call them stupid. I guess like fundamentally stupid maybe, but like they have all this data that they just misinterpret horribly, and they can never like take a step back. Like, dude. Chill. Look at the bigger picture, dog. Why do you think your phone costs like $400 fucking dollars? Like, think for a moment, okay? Well, if we had all the manufacturing here, like, okay, well, why don't we have the manufacturing? Because people export it. Why do they export it? Because they don't want to pay American workers. Well, what if they paid American workers? Well, some people would make. Okay, well, what does that do with the product? I know. And then like these conversations that I've had with people, like, look, go to little Sargon tier, where Sargon's like, I don't care if everything costs more money. That's okay as long as we protect a small section of our society's jobs from being exploited. What the fuck kind of? What is this, dude? Like. How are you sincerely, these are the arguments that you want to make? We need to degrade every single level of society, and you're hurting the poor the most when you do this, by the way, and all the poor, not just the very small percentage of jobs that you helped, right? And it's arguable if you've been helping them a long time. Like, I don't know, this kind of shit is crazy to me, and it's very, very, very frustrating, because anytime I get into arguments with people, I have to like dig, and all of them are boiling down to just these really horrible fundamental misunderstandings of statistics, and it bothers me that these people become these beacons of intellectuality. Lauren Southern is like this person that everybody looks up to for information. And Lauren is literally arguing with me, saying things like, well, Stephen, data is just the plural of anecdote. Like, I almost fucking killed myself when she said that. How could people believe this shit? You don't understand like the difficulties in sampling bias and selection bias and picking accurate representations of society, making sure everything is represented perfectly or as well as it can be. Like like sampling and polling is such a hard thing to do. It's a very rigorous, it's an incredibly rigorous process, but nobody recognizes that. And people like point to like 7 videos of like something happening in Europe. All right, in Europe, the continent, the entire continent of Europe, okay, has like 2 or 3 terrorist attacks, and people think that the entire continent of Europe is literally like devolving into a massive fucking forest fire. Like, oof, humans are not built to intuitively interpret information. You have to use higher level thought processes to understand that. Is it the Bayer theorem or whatever? Fuck, I should know these. There are a couple really good ones. Bayes theorem? Fuck. I think it's this. But there are, look up Bayes theorem, Bayes theorem or whatever. Like, there's some interesting things that go on with how unintuitive some statistics are. Like is this what I'm looking for? I think this is what I'm looking for. Where it's like, if you've got a drug that is a 99% success rate when you test, 99%, and you test 1 million people, and like, 10,000 of them test positive, how many of them have the disease, right? It ends up being like 1% of that population. It's like, well, what? It had a 99% positive rate. You're telling me these 10,000 people, like, only a handful have it? Like, that doesn't make right. And that's just one example out of 1 million. There are so many ways that that data can be misinterpreted intuitively that you have to take a step back, and you really have to think, like, what is this number actually telling me? What does this data point actually mean? What can I actually extrapolate from this? Right? You have to be careful when you're collecting this type of data. It's really, really difficult to do. I'm noticing this a lot with the race realists. Heritability, right? Heritability, I didn't study this in high school, so maybe this is a higher level concept. I'm not sure, but I mean, like, if I'm arguing it, fuck, I'm going to read about it at least, right? So I think the APA, I think the American Psychiatric Association, I think, I want to say the heritability of IQ is something like 0.5 to 0.8 or 0.5 to 0.75, right? So if the heritability is 1, that means that is a trait that is always passed from father to child or parent to child, right? If the heritability is 0, then it has nothing to do with like genetics or whatever, right? I think I explained that poorly. A heritability of 1 means that genetics are like entirely involved in passing a trait. A heritability of 0 means that genetics played no part in it, right? But like people take this heritability number, like just because something is heritable doesn't mean, even if it's heritable by up to 0.8, doesn't mean that the environment can't have a dramatic impact on the expression of this phenotype, right? Like, and this is like a pretty basic thing. If you go on Wikipedia right now, heritability, you can read about this in like 2 seconds, okay? It'll take you like a minute to get through a paragraph, right? But like you can have genetically identical plants, right, that have and their growth rate can have like a heritability of 0.8. You can plant them in one garden and see a little bit of variation due to the heritability. You can plant them in another garden with horrible soil and see them all be much shorter, but still have a little bit of variability and, variation. Did I say variability earlier? Variation, right? And you could say for both of these, right? You have a heredity of 0.8, like in terms of how the genetics are influencing like the variation of this trait, right? But that heritability doesn't address the difference between these groups, right? Not at all, right? You can have genetically identical things placed in different environments that give you dramatically different things. And even Charles Murray of the bell curve admits as much. I don't want to say admits like you caught him, like he claims as much openly, but people cite like the bell curve and like IQ heritability as proof that, like, oh, well, black people are genetically inferior to white people. It's like, dude, that's not what that means at all. And I'm going on heritability right now, but this is just like one thing. The black marriage thing with Sargon was like blowing my mind, dude. I can't believe that I'm actually having this conversation with somebody like, well, why don't they just get married, Destiny? Like, that's what you don't want to... Okay. People don't just get married. Well, why not? Well, because typically people are financially better. Like, well, why don't they just get married? Like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's the worst thing. What was this question? What was, like, the worst thing that came from discussing politics on it? Was, like, this understanding that people have, like, these horribly naive or just totally fantastic views of how kind of like this basic data interpretation shit goes, that it's very, 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 very frustrating to have conversations with certain people about this stuff. Yeah. All right, that's all I got for now. I love you guys. I'm not posting the Monday mails immediately right now. I'll probably post them on Saturday or Sunday. We'll see. Stay tuned. I love you guys. Be careful, my dudes. I'll see you later. Peace out.